Amidst everything else going on with the BYU football program, based on some reports out there, Kalani Sitake has got what they call a good problem on his hands. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first ticket purchase. All right, let's dive right in on today's show. We're going to talk about BYU's good problem, as I described in the open, with regards to their coaching staff momentarily. We'll also talk about the Big 12, quote, looking into, unquote, the situation at the end of the ASU game, and if it really is going to affect anything that's going to help BYU in any way, shape, or form. And then we'll dig into a little bit of hoops as BYU faces a very, very important 3-game stretch upcoming. So let's dive right in on today's show. Let's talk about what's going on with the BYU coaching staff. Now, BYU is 0-2 since the 9-0 start. And I trust me, the interaction y'all had with me yesterday, I got to say, overwhelmingly positive. Now, a lot of you don't agree with my take on Aaron Roderick, and I said it yesterday on the podcast. I respect any and all opinions, and the only time I will ever really take offense to anything somebody says to me is if you make it personal. You essentially go at me about something regarding myself, my family. That's the only thing, that's the only line I draw. The conversation today, I want to pivot a little bit because I believe that Kalani Sitake is going to have a conundrum on his hands. There's been reporting out there this week, or earlier this week, I should say, that Jay Hill is among the finalists for the Utah State head coaching position in Logan, as he should be. I asked Kalani Sitake the question yesterday during media availability. He said, Jay Hill has been the subject of head coaching rumors since the day he stepped on campus at BYU. And he's not wrong in saying that. He says, I believe I have multiple future head coaches on my staff, as he should say that, because he is in the business of promoting his guys. He will always promote his players, promote his coaches. He wants people around him, speaking of Kalani Sitake, to go on to have success. He has his dream job. I had somebody ask me yesterday as we were going back and forth on, would Kalani Sitake ever leave BYU, Jake? Maybe there's a number that could pry him away from BYU. But when I say Kalani Sitake loves BYU, it's like a capital L-O-V-E-S, loves BYU. Kalani truly has his dream job, and I don't think he's intent on leaving for pretty much anything. Now, if you were to offer him, let's say, $10 million and a roster that's chock full of talent, a la primetime Nick Saban type stuff, well, yeah, okay, I think anybody would be a fool not to turn that down. But so long as he's at BYU, Kalani has got a very good network of coaches around him, and this guy's on his staff right now, by virtue of the success BYU has had this year at 9-2, and you can argue that they're a disappointing team and you're upset with the fact that they've lost 2 straight games. That's beside the point here. When you are a program the caliber of BYU and you win 9, potentially what I believe will be 10 games in a regular season, and let's say whatever happens in the postseason, whether it's a Big 12 conference berth, a bowl game, college football playoff berth, etc., you have a chance to go double-digit wins. People will want your people. It is a good problem for Kalani Sitake to have, in that there is attention being cast upon his program, the other programs around them, and that could be from anywhere, sea to shining sea, are going to say, what is BYU doing right, and how can we get some of that for ourselves? There are going to be multiple coaches. Jay Hill, I believe the guys like Kelly Papinga, Justin Enna, Gennaro Guilford, all of those guys on the defensive side of the football, Sione Pua, I think all of them will be candidates for other jobs. There are analysts for BYU as well, I think, that are going to be in prime position should movement occur to maybe move up to a full-time coaching position. Let's say a guy like Chad Kauha'aha'a as a defensive line coach, for example. Offensively, Aaron Roderick is still going to have options out there. I don't know what the options will be, and be it far from me to speak for individuals like this, but I also can tell you that guys like Fesi Sitake, TJ Woods, Harvey Unga, you look at just the different bodies on BYU's coaching staff. I forget other guys, Kevin Gilbride. The success BYU has had is going to cast a spotlight on BYU's staff members, in particular their assistant coaches, and there is going to be people who will say, hey, can we pry that guy away from us? Let's say hypothetically that Jay Hill does take the job at Utah State. And let me reiterate, I am not saying he's taking the job. All I can report is I know that he is a finalist, having talked with people very much in the know in Logan, that Jay Hill is absolutely in the mix for that head coaching position. Some have said that it's his job if he wants it. I can't say that for a fact, but I do know that he's in the running for that gig. Let's say he were to get that position. Why wouldn't he turn and try and pluck away 2 or 3 guys from BYU's coaching staff to come in and be his coordinators? Why couldn't Justin Enna go back to Utah State where he's once a defensive coordinator? Why couldn't Kelly Papinga go become a defensive coordinator under Jay Hill in Logan? Why wouldn't Fesi Sitake, who's been the wide receivers coach and passing game coordinator, take an offensive coordinator title at Utah State? That is a situation that could play out here. It's a very realistic situation in my mind, but I'm just saying that's one example. You're going to see coaches from BYU staff get overtures about joining other coaching staffs. I also know this. Kalani Sitake loves his guys, and they in turn love him. I'm talking up and down that coaching staff. They speak in glowing terms of one another about the camaraderie, the relationship they have. Think about it. Guys like Kalani Sitake have guys on his staff that are compatriots and former teammates of his. Kevin Gilbride, Aaron Roderick, Gennaro Guilford. Let's see, who else? Well, there's also guys that played in the same era as him, maybe shortly thereafter. Jay Hill, obviously, up at Utah. Sione Puha, also with the Utes. You just look at it. And Justin Enna, obviously a teammate of his as well. He has got guys he knows and trusts on his staff. And I think they, in turn, know what they are working with at BYU. They've embraced what BYU is all about. And the success that BYU is having on the field, once again, despite what some of y'all might think after an 0-2 run here the last couple of games, BYU has still won 9 games. And when you win 10 games at the Power 4 level, people, athletic directors, university presidents, decision makers, for lack of a better term, for other staffs, are going to say, hey, what are they doing right, and how can we go and get some of that for ourselves? I hope that BYU is ready to open up the pocketbook a little bit. Now, we've already been shown that they are willing to do that. Jay Hill got what I understand to be an unprecedented sum of money annually to become the defensive coordinator and associate head coach at BYU. It was something BYU had never done before in their history to get him to come to Provo, Utah. If that is to believe it could continue, and also if you look at just what BYU is allegedly paying in the basketball program alone, salary-wise, guys like Kevin Young, BYU should be in the running to keep as many guys in place in Provo with new contracts and increased overall money added to those deals if they want to make that a priority. I believe that absolutely should be a priority. And I can't say that everybody's going to stay intact at BYU because, once again, when you have success and opportunities, as Kalani has talked about, for guys to move up in the ranks, whether it's a Fesi Sitake going from being a passing game coordinator to being an offensive coordinator, or in the case of a position coach like Gennaro Guilford, maybe you get a chance to go from being a cornerbacks coach to being a defensive passing game coordinator, or even a defensive coordinator in your own right. Kalani will never stand in the way of guys progressing in the profession. That's one thing he's been very clear about from the get-go. But the nice part is, when you have success like BYU is having this season, people are going to want your people. And the nice part is, even if some of those people leave, there's going to be interest from a multitude of others who are saying, hey, BYU's got a pretty good gig and a pretty good thing going here. Why don't I check them out and see if it's the right option for me? So once again, I do believe it's a good problem for Kalani Sitake to have on his hands at this current time. Now, coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the fallout from the Arizona State deal. Obviously, BYU loses that game, but there was privacy concerns raised, security on the field alerts about that were raised. What ultimately can the Big 12 really do that would really help, or I guess do anything to benefit or change the situation? We'll try and delve into that and explain that next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, Game Time is here to get you out to whatever events you happen to want to go to. A lot of us, if you're watching this podcast, I'm sure you're a sports fan. You probably want to go watch BYU football or a myriad of other sporting events. But even if it's not that, whether you want to go to concerts, see your favorite comedian, go to the theater, they've got all the options for you with our friends over at Game Time. And they have a brand new feature called the Game Time Picks feature. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the right options for you. What I love about Game Time is got a bevy of other options inside the app. My favorite feature is the all-in ticketing feature, also all-in pricing feature on their ticketing. What it is, you toggle it in the app and it shows you exactly what you're paying right up front, fees included. You're not getting to the checkout screen and all of a sudden it feels like you've had an avalanche of fees tacked on to the tickets you were looking to buy. That will already be acknowledged right up front by toggling that in the app. They've also got the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, even job loss protection. You lose your gig, they will help you guys out. So check it out today. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets and do it with Game Time and the Game Time Picks feature inside the app. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your purchase. Once again, terms apply. Create that account, redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Jake Hatch here with you. All right, so BYU obviously came up short, a Hail Mary 2 yards short in that loss to Arizona State. Just a disappointing outcome of a game that was very much there for the taking. I still will rue the fact that Jake Retzlaff couldn't complete that pass to JoJo Phillips. It's a throw he has made before this season, and for whatever reason, couldn't hit on that pass. And then also the interception that all but sealed BYU's fate, the play after that, just really, really bad back-to-back situations. But then Arizona State inexplicably decides, you know what we're going to do? We're going to crater our rushing yardage by going backwards to try and kill out the clock. And then you have a guy like Sam Levitt toss the ball into the stands, leaving 1 second for BYU. The crowd rushes the field. The officials are swarmed. Kenny Dillingham is losing his ever-loving you-know-what on the field. And the fact that that little tirade from him didn't get flagged baffles me, because you don't carpet F-bomb officials like that and get away with it very often. I think the situation at hand, because Kalani Sitake said at post-game that essentially the conference weighed in and said no penalties were going to be called. There could have been what I'm trying to say, an intentional grounding call. There could have been delay of game because of the crowd rushing the field with time still on the clock. Now, they didn't know that in the moment. They had to go back and look at it on replay. But the simple fact of the matter is BYU has had opportunities to get extra plays. Just ask Utah about their crowd rushing the field against BYU. And then also you could have had an unsportsmanlike conduct from Kenny Dillingham. None of that was called. Then after the game, you have got inebriated students berating and in some cases physically accosting BYU staff members. Now, do BYU staff members act in kind? In certain circumstances, they did. Justin Anderson, there's a video, you can go see it on my social media feeds, of him about getting into it with a staffer and what appears to be Ryan Phillips, BYU's head strength and conditioning coach, pretty much yanking him away and saying, we're not doing this. And Ryan Phillips, if that was him, props to you. I don't care who the staffer was, to get Justin away from the situation and say, hey, get out of here. That's the right thing to do. I had somebody, and they're not a media member, but they were down there at the game on the field in the aftermath of it, who said it was the most chaotic and just overall, they use the term, okay, certain BYU people, like to swear. They use the term bleep show when it came to how things were handled on the field after the game. There was very, very little, and in this case, I think, lax security at minimum. They put up a rope after the fact to try and help BYU staffers get off the field. But it took guys like Tom Homo trucking out on the field to make sure that Chase Roberts wasn't swarmed by these inebriated students. And once again, they were accosting BYU staff members. You can see it on the game broadcast tape. If you watch at the very tail end before they switch over to the next game, down at the bottom of the screen, in the lower left corner, I probably should have taken a screenshot of this, but I literally thought of this in the moment. You can see a student or a BYU staffer get shoved by an ASU fan. That's uncalled for. None of that is okay. That just just blanket statement. None of that and none of this is okay. Kalani Sitake was asked yesterday about the aftermath and what the word from the Big 12 was, because There was also a staff member who recorded a private conversation with allegedly Tyler Batty speaking to the BYU team and firing them up with some pretty choice language. And we talked about that whole situation yesterday. You can go back and listen to my defense of Tyler Batty's right to say that. But the fact of the matter is we now know that Kalani Sitake said the Big 12 is, quote, looking into, unquote, all of it. Whether Chase Roberts had caught the pass, because guess what? He did catch the pass. The fact that the guy waved it as incomplete, I'm like, what are you talking about? He's clearly on the ground in possession of the ball. That should be the 40 whatever yards added to his tally along with the reception for his season totals. That needs to be changed. Then the Big 12's also got to look into who was in that corridor recording BYU's halftime speech, and was anything more than that speech captured? Were there game plans? Was there personnel packages? Was stuff like that captured that could be, in theory, like a Spygate situation? That's got to be looked into. You also have to look into the post-game situation with the security and the fact that BYU staff members had to essentially escort their own people off the field. Where is the security on that field? There's very lax, if any, it felt like. And I'm not going to blame the security team because, let's be honest, how often has Mountain America Stadium, or what I like to call Sun Devil Stadium, ever been that full in the past 20 years? Not that often. So the Big 12 is looking into all of this, and I truly believe that really the only thing that can come out of this, and there's already bylaws in place for the crowd rushing the field to have fines levied against Arizona State. That's in the Big 12 bylaws. I believe the first offense was $50,000. Don't quote me on that. I'm sure some of you will correct me in the notes below. It might be $100K, but I think it's $50,000 for the first incursion of fans onto the field. In fact, they did it twice in one game. I don't know how that tallies. It may be $100,000 and $150,000. But the other thing is, if there were staff members inside Mountain America Stadium filming or capturing audio of that thing, that's an invasion of privacy. And Connor Pay talked about the fact that it's something that shouldn't have happened. I think the only thing that can really come out of this from the Big 12 is a public reprimand of ASU and a plan that the conference essentially tells them, here is how you are going to improve this, and it's never going to happen again, with X, Y, Z on down the list of things that they want to see improved. And if it's not fixed, then we're going to levy more fines against you. So I would believe that at some point we may get a report out of the Big 12 of an announcement saying that, hey, the Arizona State's athletic department has been fined X whatever amount of money with regards to the incursions of fans onto the field during the play against BYU, and obviously some of the post-game shenanigans, and then also the incursion of BYU's privacy in the locker room. All that stuff is not okay. And once again, really, what can they do? Because Kalani Sitake said it himself. The game is over. They're not going to go back and change the outcome of this game because there's really nothing you can do to change the outcome of the game. So the only thing I believe that the Big 12 ultimately can do is levy fines against Arizona State and essentially put together a plan detailing what Arizona State needs to fix to make sure that this does not happen again. And then also, I would believe that BYU will be more circumspect about who is in said corridors and what is going on during halftime, post-game, how they're going to handle things. Do they need to bring their own security to make sure that their people aren't being accosted? There's a whole litany of things that need to be discussed here, but really the only recourse, I guess, that the Big 12 and BYU have is levy fines against Arizona State. And money's money, and $100,000 here and $100,000 there. It's chump change when these budgets for these schools are $100+ million. So I know. So, and the only reason I'm really addressing this is because, trust me, I had like multiple of you say, Jake, what's going on with this? So that's what we know right now. We do know that the Big 12 is looking into all of it, and I think it's going to take some time for them to review all the film, try and establish who the official, or not the official, who the person was in that corridor, because you see some of the video, they're wearing a wristband that indicates they are part of the staff at Mountain America Stadium down there in Tempe, whether it's a security guard, some other type of staffer. They should not have done what they did, and they're going to have to identify that. They're going to have to identify a whole litany of different things. There could be some students that are in trouble with regards to their physical nature and some of the choice language they're using against BYU, they can be identified. Trust me, we got camera systems in this world these days, folks, that can identify people and can identify them very, very quickly. We've seen that already. So that's really kind of where things stand right now. And I'll be sure to update you if I hear anything, and maybe we won't hear anything at all. Maybe it's just handled in-house and it's quiet, hush-hush stuff. Like they told BYU, here's what we're going to do. They tell Arizona State, this is what you're going to do. And they move along with it. But it's a crazy, crazy situation. And I sincerely hope for BYU's sake, they'd never have something like that happen again, because I had a couple of people tell me it was a fairly concerning environment to be in, just due to, like I said, students, and they're inebriated. I get that, but you don't put your hands on people. That's a really, really bad situation. And when you're dealing with football players who are in a high tense situation like that, that's a combustible scenario. And I'm glad we didn't see more fireworks really come out of that, if I'm being very, very honest. All right, so there you go. That's what I got for you guys on that front. Now we'll finish up today's show talking a little BYU hoops. What needs to happen this next week for BYU to really assert itself in the eyes of the national media? Well, I think it's more important that certain players probably need to assert themselves more than others. I'll try to explain that next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action this season with FanDuel as America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. A lot of us on Thanksgiving Day are going to be watching football along with spending time with our family and eating food. The 3 F's I call of Thanksgiving: family, food, and football. If you're sitting there and you have a hunch that you want to place a bet on a game, FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything to place your bets live on the NFL all in one place. And when you get the hunch in the middle of that game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you're placing your bets. It's as simple as that. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. And once again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Simple as that. That's FanDuel.com to get started. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you once again for being Locked On Cougars, your first view and or listen of the day. Hope you guys are doing well out there. All right, BYU basketball's got a big week ahead of it, and they're going to be playing in the Rady Children's Invitational, taking on Ole Miss on Thanksgiving Day, 3:30 p.m. Mountain Time on FS1. It'll also obviously be on BYU Radio. And then they will play the winner of Purdue and or NC State on Friday as a result of whatever happens on Thursday. These two games, combined with their road trip to Rhode Island next week to take on the Providence Friars, comprise easily the best 3 games of BYU's non-conference slate. 2 of them officially neutral site, the other a road game out there in Providence, Rhode Island. And the more I read into mock drafts, read stuff up on you guys like Jaeger Demon, by the way, Jaeger Demon saying that he doesn't really necessarily, he's not focused on the Big 12 championship. He's calling it the big championship, meaning the NCAA tournament title. If he can lead BYU to that kind of glory, he will be an all-time legend in just one season of BYU, because at this point, does anybody really expect realistically for Jaeger Demon to spend more than one season here at BYU? I sure don't. But he's got a big opportunity this week. And guys like him, Cannon Catchings, I think Mihailo Bošković. I also look at guys like Dallin Hall just returning from injury. This next 3-game stretch is going to tell us a lot about this BYU team. And I think more importantly, what their prospects are in the Big 12 Conference. BYU is considered to be a middle-of-the-pack Big 12 team this season, and that's not a bad place to be, because, once again, this is truly the best basketball conference in the country. There's just literally zero doubt about that fact. But I think more importantly, as BYU looks towards the Big 12 slate, you need to have some absolute studs emerge to kind of be your go-to guys. I think Jaeger Demon has already established himself as one of those guys. I think Dallin Hall absolutely is one of those guys, but he has not shown it quite yet this year. But he's only had 1 game. He played against Mississippi Valley State. What can you really show? The nice part was he came back and showed no ill effects of that toe injury he's been dealing with. I also want to see a guy like Cannon Catchings. Can he continue to kind of hone his game and really show more than just being a spot-up shooter for this BYU team? He showed a lot of that against Mississippi Valley State. But once again, MVSU and a team like Ole Miss that was ranked earlier this season, that's a whole different level of basketball and opponent you're going up against. Can you have that same type of performance against the Rebels than you did against the Delta Devils? That's a great question mark. Same thing for a guy like Jaeger Demon. He is considered to be right now a bona fide top 5 pick, if not a top 3 pick in this NBA draft. that comes with a lot of people scrutinizing your tape and your performance literally game by game. You can't afford to have an off game because when people all of a sudden be like, you know what? See, told you he can't do it. Ole Miss is going to cast a really, really big spotlight on a guy like that. And the spotlight that he is going to be cast upon him, it will also obviously glare on other guys on his team. Can a guy like Dallin Hall show what he's capable of? Can Fousseyni Traore, who's a senior looking to make an impact in his final season as a Cougar and boost his professional prospects? Can they all go out there under that spotlight and show what they're capable of? That's a great question. I'm still concerned that BYU isn't fully ingrained with regards to the pill and switch defense that Will Voigt has implemented. I think given time, it's going to be a very nice thing for BYU to have in their arsenal because it looks very much like a modern defense should look, especially at the collegiate level. But the concern is, will it hold up against, like, once again, a team like Ole Miss and then potentially Purdue or NC State, and then obviously a road game at Providence? BYU hasn't played a true road game yet this year. That Providence game is going to be the only true road game of the non-conference slate. So there's a lot to be learned about this BYU basketball team over this next week and change. And I, for one, I'm excited to see how they do because I think guys like Yegor Demon, they know what they're going up against. This is a kid that was playing professional basketball really without the professional status next to his name last year for Real Madrid. Same thing for Mihailo Bošković. Cannon Catchings, he's played for Overtime Elite. He has played against some of the best prep players there are in this country. Okay, can you take it to the next level now? You've had 5 games to really kind of get a feel for how the college game is going to go. The officiating, the overall tenor of the game with 2 20-minute halves. You have those media timeouts every 4 minutes and change. They've had time to adjust to how college basketball operates here. Now, can you go out there and once again, kind of show that you can go to the next level and play against top-tier talent and shine on that stage? If they can do that, it's going to be absolutely awesome to see because that means BYU is going to be very much in the mix when it comes to the Big 12 conference slate. Now, if they falter, well, that could raise some concerns. Maybe the defense is off. They're not able to shoot, obviously, away from the Marriott Center. There's a whole litany of things that could come out of this 3-game stretch. But I've got fingers crossed, and I think a best-case scenario for me, I'm just speaking frankly, is a 2-1 record. If they're 2-1, I don't care where the losses and wins come from. If they're 2-1 after this 3-game stretch, I'd consider that a success. And by the way, if they're 2-1 and they go into obviously follow this 3-game stretch and they're sitting there now at 7-1, there's a very good chance BYU's ranked potentially inside the top 20. They're one spot out of the top 25 in this week's AP poll, so they're not far out. They've steadily kind of risen through the ranks here, and they're so close to being actually in the rankings. And I think a win, maybe a split this weekend at the Rady Children's Invitational down there in San Diego probably gets them ranked because, once again, Ole Miss was ranked at one point. Purdue, I think, is ranked with a 6th. I might be wrong on that, but they're nationally ranked inside the top 10. And NC State, BYU knows about NC State. They gave them everything they could handle last year in Las Vegas. So there is a really, really strong chance, even if BYU goes 1-1 this weekend ahead of that trip to Providence next week, they could be ranked when they head out to Rhode Island to take on the Friars out there. So there's a lot to play for BYU. There's just zero if and or but about it. And more importantly, there's a lot for guys like Mihailo Bošković, once again, Yegor Demon, Cannon Catchings, and you can go just down the list. Dawson Baker, who else? And also, I'll also add this. Hopefully get Keba Keita back at some point during this stretch. I've heard anything from he could be back for these games this week at the Rady Children's Invitational in San Diego. He could be out until the Big 12 conference season begins. I've heard all different types of time frames about his availability. If he's able to get back on the court and he can play right away, go for it. Keba Keita completely changes BYU's look, especially defensively with his athleticism. He's also a vertical lob threat in the offense that I love me some Foose. I love me some Mihailo Bošković, but they do not have the overall hops and athleticism that Keba Keita possesses. And I think his reinsertion to the lineup be a really, really nice thing to have if you're a BYU fan. So there you go. Some thoughts on BYU basketball as they get ready for, like I said, a very important 3-game stretch. Maybe the really only look we get this non-conference slate of what life in the Big 12 is going to look like come December 31st when Big 12 play begins against Arizona State and obviously ensues for the next 2 months and change. All right, so there you go. That's what I got for you guys on this Tuesday edition of the podcast. Once again, I appreciate all the feedback. I really do appreciate you guys keeping it civil, but at the same time, I welcome disagreement. It's what I live for. It's what I do in sports radio. That's why I do this podcast. I live for the banter and the back and forth, and I can appreciate every single one of you who weighed in with your thoughts. And once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.